Hello and welcome to a Wrap Rugby podcast special. It's a couple of weeks late, but we are reviewing the Women's Six Nations. And joining me, Hugh, to do that task is two able-bodied and exciting and dynamic personalities. We have got Captain Dr. Harley Worthy,
Hello.
and we have got Captain Dr. Julia Singer, aka Rugby Julia from Twitter.
Hey,
Thank you for joining me both. Right, this is going to be a Wales-centric podcast. We are a Welsh podcast, and that means we have to talk about Wales. Yes, we do, I'm afraid. So let's jump straight into it and talk about what our expectations. Well, no, actually, let's start with what did we think of the Women's Six Nations as a whole? Julia, what did you make of just the tournament, not just about Wales, the whole event this time around?
I think it was another exciting one. In terms of for Wales, obviously, there's not much more to say than winning the wooden spoon. Luckily we've got one success that we have to talk about. But overall, I think the big name or the top line items from this one were Scotland and to a lesser extent Ireland. Unfortunately, not Wales this time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Harley, there was a lot of chat about the expectations for Wales coming to this tournament. A lot of chat about where we might finish. What was your expectations for Wales coming into this Six Nations?
I think same as most people, my expectation was solidifying our position as the third team and getting very close to pushing France to that second spot. Particularly with it being a home game. And the hope of finishing the tournament with a big successful selling out. No, not selling out, but to try and get people into the Principality Stadium, so the biggest rugby venue in Wales. You're hoping for good performances and to see a development from the previous year and WXV1. And that, well, it's no spoiler because it's long past the event. It didn't happen.
Yes, it very much didn't happen, and we'll get into the whys and wherefores in a moment. But we came into this tournament off the back of the Celtic Challenge, the first ever time having this. So it was a time to pick players from teams that weren't in the PWR. Julia, what did you make of the Celtic Challenge and the various campaigns that Brython and Gwalia had? And did that at the time make you more excited for the Six Nations? Did you think it benefited us?
I know there were a lot of complaints from different corners of the rugby sphere about the intricacies of the Celtic Challenge, the way that it was perhaps run, and to some extent the results. I personally, I really liked it. I do think that it's a good thing, especially for Wales. I think it's also a good thing for Scotland and Ireland. But I was, considering I didn't have a loyalty, these were all new teams to all of us. I think that it was great. I think that it gave us some insight into, in fact, some players we're about to talk about now. I think it gave them the confidence that they needed going into the Six Nations. And I think that it also did that for especially Irish players, but definitely some Scottish players as well. We saw debutantes from all three of those. And, everybody had good games and bad games. Nothing seemed, like another Red Roses. And that was really all you can ask for something so new.
Yeah. Harley, you obviously were a Gwalia fan for the season, them being the unofficial East Wales
East
region.
Weston.
Yeah, that wasn't ever like this is how it works, but
Yeah,
you
actually,
put
Harley taught me that. I had no idea that it was kind of East West, but
because it was an
it
amalgamation of
ended
the
up that
kits,
way.
so we kind of reads between the lines. Harley, what did you make of the Celtic Challenge, and did you enjoy being a Gwalia fan?
I really did, especially given when you looked at the squads when they first announced it. Sort of was more, Brooklyn Thunders were the team that sort of more based in the West, or at least supposedly playing out of Parker Scarlets, although their first game was at Rodney Parade, which is as east as it gets in Wales. They were a lot. They had a lot of the Worcester Warriors players who, basically were made redundant due to the shenanigans going on there, which is the most polite possible way I could describe it as. Mainly because it would just be too long a sweary rant if I talk about my actual true feelings on it. Granny Lightning seemed very much more the developmental team. Although, admittedly, there were a couple of players. So I think like Nell Metcalf came down from Gloucester Hartbury because she's sort of fringe squad player there, so she was getting some game time there. Yeah, I thought first couple of games really good. I think by the got as a lot of the teams, they've got quite soundly beaten by the two Irish teams, so the Wolfhound, the Wolfhounds,
Yeah,
and
the Wolfhounds, yeah.
And the
Clovers.
I
Clovers,
wouldn't
yeah.
say the Wolf Pack, and that's like the pub in Emmerdale or something, isn't it? The Wolfhounds and the Clovers. Very close game in Edinburgh. Probably should have won, and had a goal kicking been a little bit better, would have won. So I thought, we were very good. Probably deserved to be in that top three. Didn't, so
Edinburgh,
they ended up top of
another
the.
strong side too.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
Edinburgh
Edinburgh
are
were very
excellent.
good.
We had we had Craig Manson on Cardiff Central Pod last week, and we did our own sort of wrap up of the Women's Six Nation on there, and and we also had him on straight after the Gwalior Edinburgh game, and he's saying, he's explaining like how their coaching staff or university team, which is sort of something I want to get on. I want to get onto when we talk about Wales properly. With having a good coach and who are very well respected in the Scottish women's rugby community. But yeah, it was some really good ones. And some of those broke into the Wales side. So Gwen Hopkins being an obvious standout for a debut try against Ireland. Molly Reardon, who's only just converted from scrum half to hooker, which is not a conversion you often hear, certainly not in this sort of time frame.
Yeah.
I thought she was actually all right as a converted hooker. Very much similar. It was very much similar to the whole Evan Lloyd thing, to mirror the men's side, where it was like probably a bit too soon to be playing international rugby, but I don't think you let yourself down with it. So probably not the strongest line out thrower, but actually, so they were better compared to some of Wales's line out throwers. Actually, not that bad. So yeah, I thought good for them. I was a bit surprised Britton Thunder weren't as strong, although they did seem to build towards the end.
Yeah,
of the season.
we built through it. I say we because I was a Brython fan. I am a Brython fan, and when we played the first game against Gwalior in Newport, it was kind of like, oh, okay. And I'll hold my hands up. I didn't really know the story of the squads and who was supposed to be the good team and who was supposed to be the development team. So I was like, wow. And I was really impressed by Gwalior about how, especially their pack and their kicking. I was like, this is a team that could do stuff. And then the teams kind of went like opposite trajectories across the tournament. And then we finished with the last game, and Brython absolutely, it was like a complete reverse. Like Mart said it on the Scarlet's pod. It was like the teams had swapped jerseys from the first game, and it was completely the other way around. As a fan, obviously it wasn't great for Gwalior fans, but the final game against Gwalior at Parc y Scarlets was one of the most enjoyable games I've watched, because every time Brython got the ball, it felt like we were going to run down the pitch and score, which was great. So I'm just glad that the Celtic Challenge next season, and it still to me feels like a stopgap tournament where we're waiting for something else to come along to replace it. But I am glad that it's going to be like a proper league next season where everyone plays each other home and away. I'm looking forward to it starting again.
I do wonder. I do wonder what will happen there with, especially payment, and I know it's always touchy, especially when you bring all of the paying woes that are happening in Wales, also other places, but we're talking about Wales, and the paying player problem. I do wonder, just because I think about a few of you mentioned the people who lost their clubs because of Worcester, and of course I'm especially thinking of Alcal, who still hasn't been picked up by any PWR teams. I do wonder if there is perhaps something, that I assume there's a lot she knows that we don't know. But I do hope that it means, maybe there is a softer landing spot for people like that, and we can start bringing people back playing rugby in Wales, however that ends up. If this is how it ends up, it's not the ideal way, because of course they want to be playing those English teams, but as we've talked about, and as I've been thoroughly educated online, it seems like England has been extremely resistant to having any Celtic teams in their domestic competitions. And if that's the case, then maybe we just need to build something else.
Yeah.
And maybe the Celtic Challenge is it.
Well, one of mine and Harley's favorite topics to discuss is the Anglo-Welsh League in the men's game. We won't get into that, but from a women's point of view, it's a completely different kettle of fish, because there isn't kind of a fixed alternative. Yeah,
there's no parity.
Exactly. And a lot of people, including Welsh players, have come out and said that they wish there was a Welsh team in PWR.
I'm thinking of Flaky George. She always, every time she's interviewed about anything about where do you want to play, she's like, I want to go back. I want to go back to Wales. There's nowhere for me to go. Jasmine Joyce said she'd come back. She'd leave sevens and come. There are people who want to be back.
Well, there was, there's all the stats that, without getting too ahead of ourselves, about how many of the Red Roses are fluent Welsh speakers and things. So we won't get into that. But Harley, we've heard the stories about. We've all interviewed people from the Welsh regions, the men's regions, and they've talked about how they would love to have a semi-pro women's team, and there seems to be suggestions that a women's URC could be in the works. What's kind of your view? Do you think that is a solution, or do you think the Celtic Challenge is we've got something now, so let's make this work first? What's your view?
So I mean, two separate ways around it. First of all, like the thing is, PWR that's fixed and ring faced for 3 years now, so it would take 3 years. Now, do we want to hold off our development for 3 years, or do we want to build it?
Exactly. We don't.
I said with the Welsh players, it's a bit different. So the likes of Al Callard, when Sinead Harries was, because they were essentially contracted by Wales, they were still employed. They just didn't have a club to play for, so that helps there. And for the other players in those two squads, it's a bit different. Now, as much as I'd love to be turning out my blue and blacks for Cardiff Rugby women. Yes, we love Rachel Malcolm. For the audio listeners, Hugh is having a big sup from his Rachel Malcolm fan club. It's a fan club mug.
Shout out Leslie.
Panda. I'm sure we can just check the link in. Or is that technically sponsorship? I'm not sure.
No money changed hands, apart from my wallet to Leslie for when I bought the mug.
yeah. If anything, it's negative. It's negatively. We've negatively benefited from it. But yeah. So as for the team, as much as I'd love to be supporting the Cardiff team, booing an Ospreys team, it would. We're struggling to fund. We're constantly talking about how we can't struggle to support 4 men's teams. So before we worry about having one at each of these clubs, let's get these 2. If we can get them to a very nice, sustainable, professional setup, then maybe we look at a third one. Which probably where I think we need to maybe change from the men's game is probably do a North Wales one, because we've got 3 development. We've got 3 women's development hubs in Wales. So we've got Western East, which is basically Bristol and Gwalia, and then we've got this North one, this RGC type one. So actually, that would probably be the next team to open if we were going to open one. But let's try and get these 2 up and running. Let's get them playing. Which I'm glad we're going to. Let's see if we can get this Celtic Challenge running for a bit longer. Just let's. I know it's only 6 teams. It's not a great size for a league, but it's a good start. So let's get on that. Maybe we say to the Italian teams, "Oh, do you want to chuck a side in?" South Africa have a professional women's team who only play amateurs. They haven't got an equivalent.
Right.
I don't know. So then maybe they have the choice of come join us, and they don't have to worry about the Super Rugby thing, or maybe they do go and do Super Rugby W. Yes, I think is that the name of the competition?
Yeah.
I don't know. Or is it W Super Rugby W women's, or is it Women's Super Rugby W? I can never remember.
No,
I'm sure
is.
There's
It's
women
Super.
like 4 times in the name.
Yeah, it's just Super W for Australia, but that is what I think they would do, especially because that's the one that is bringing in the Moana Pacifica and the Druas of the world. I think about the South Africa and again, we're not talking about the Springbok women. We're just talking about the Bulls Daisies. I don't know if it's like it's my fault that I don't know if it's a super rich club. Or if they would give the women a ton of money, but I don't know how easy it would be for them to come travel. And I mean, honestly,
well, Celtic Challenge is funded by World Rugby, so it would probably have to be a similar thing that World Rugby would have to help them out.
We know they love giving us lots of money.
Oh dear. Anyway, right. Let's actually start talking about the Six Nations. So we start off with game number 1, which was against Scotland in Cardiff. Ended up being a 20 points to 18 defeat. I'm going to use that word a lot during this. And it was a historic win for Scotland, I have to say. They hadn't won down in Cardiff for a very long time. They played very well, very deserving winners. I think it would be fair to say, Julia, that Wales had that kick to get the draw at the end. If we had drawn that game, it would have been a bit of a robbery.
Yeah, I kind of figured that was where it was going to go. And, there's a lot to say to whether that's even a fair point to make. It is, because it is the reason that there was no draw pulled. It was also a brand new replacement scrum half, super young, hard way to enter that competition. There can be discussions about whether or not it was time. But ultimately, yeah, the kick didn't go the way we wanted, or it went which we didn't want. Much like referees, I feel like one player in a game of 15 rarely makes or breaks an entire game, and rarely does, I mean, other than the numbers on the score sheet, defines a whole match. I just don't think that the way that Wales played up till that moment made it such that, it's crazy that she didn't make this kick and she completely ruined it. That's not true. Just like most ref decisions, a lot of things had to happen before you got there. And if we look at the Scotland game especially, and for all games for that to happen to Sean Jones, it sucks because it was a really close game. But if you look at play by play, honestly, while we had worse games elsewhere, that was not our best. I do think that was a winnable game for a good 40 minutes. I don't think Sean Jones's kick was the reason that we didn't play well, is all I'll say. Otherwise, yeah, she was young. She made a bad decision. I am sure it will haunt her for the rest of her career.
Harley, what was your emotions as you were watching this one?
I mean, there are a couple of things. So first of all, obviously, Sean Jones with the kick away at the end. Remember, there were a lot of senior players, there were a lot of forwards getting into form that Caterpillar ruck. There was a fairly experienced Premiership winning 10 outside of her who was encouraging it. So, like, before we go through that's system. And then obviously, Lecky George missed the kick, which isn't surprising when you think she doesn't really kick for Wales. Basically, it's
You barely quick kicks for Gloucester.
Ciara Bevan first, and then for Gloucester, it's all Emma Singh.
Right.
And I remember when we last spoke on Pirate Rugby, I was saying about the Gloucester Hartbury model worked well until you realise which Gloucester Hartbury players aren't in that team, and you realise it's the fullback who does the points kicking. It's the 9. It's the hook kickers actually. Neve Jones was playing a lot more than Cassie Jones did. The and actually she was injured for most of that tournament, but we'll get onto that later on. I think there were a lot of worrying signs that actually came to play and got exposed very deeply in the back. So one thing I was talking with a few Scottish followers said, Scotland really tore us up out wide, and I can't believe they didn't make more of it.
5 line breaks to Wales.
They almost got sucked into trying to alpha test, the Sam Warburton cliche of the alpha test, because one of the criticisms of the Scotland women team has been, and actually for the men's team as well to a certain extent, they don't, if you punch them in the nose, they just shy away and back down. And they're fantastic, one of the best back lines in women's rugby at the moment.
Yes.
But you could get at the forwards, and they seem to be so concerned on trying to outmatch Wales's forwards, and actually they did get parity, which is part of the problem. Which these, the other side of the coin with Wales issues. But they were so busy doing that they didn't go up wide when they were cutting us to ribbons because our defence is, and you will hear this a lot on this pod. Our defence system is not right. It is completely.
It was bad.
Donkey. You're finding the winger in the centre of the pitch far too often, and you shouldn't really, even with a blitz, even with like a box style shooter defence, the winger is never in that much. If anything, actually, they stand a bit further wide and then come in for the tackle.
Your center shouldn't be in every third ruck.
Yeah.
I mean,
Johan Cunningham was Wales' men's national defence coach.
Okay, and wasn't that the time
you're getting him confused with
Yeah, I was like
Byron Hayward.
Yeah, because he was an
am I? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, he was former Scots forwards coach, which is why our forwards are really great.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
It is why we have a monster pack. Yeah. Is Sean Connor? No, he's attack as well. Never mind. No, I don't know.
We have an attack coach.
Difference coach.
Because that gets onto the other side of the coin, and it's something Hugh's brought up numerous times. Wales has scored 5 tries from backs in the last calendar year. My shifted now, but when he brought up the stat, like about the Six Nations, and only one of them was a winger. I mean, the one game we did win, which, Wales, but, just jumping ahead to the tournament, again, was all the front row. And it does, it's just, it almost, as soon as it gets to the forwards a great carrying game. They obviously can't do it all. They can't travel that far. I mean, Cecilia, Tuipulotu, and Alcal do their best.
Both scored in this
then
game.
it gets to the backs and it just sort of disintegrates. It's
One of the
like,
few,
like no
but
pace,
two of the
there's
few
no
scorers.
Yeah.
thing.
Yep. Two of the few repeat scorers, actually, also scorers. There were so few. And I mean, I have people who aren't even particular Wales fans, but know that I am, were texting me throughout the Six Nations, but certainly during Scotland, and then certainly in Italy. That was just, do you just have 3 scorers? Is that it? Is that all we have?
Well, we'll find out as we go on to the next games.
We will find out.
The stats for this game are pretty even, like you guys have said, across the board. The only big difference being line breaks, 5 to Scotland, 1 to Wales, and then carrying meters obviously goes with that. Is that foreshadowing for the rest of the games? Yes, it is. Next game then was away in Bristol, which I think is about as close to a neutral venue as you can get.
I was going to say about a quarter of the starters for Wales in that one were Bears, so home.
Yeah. So the score line ended up being 46 points to 10, which everyone at the time said was a big improvement. And everyone at the time also said that the performance was encouraging. With hindsight, Julia, how do you look at this game?
That was actually the one that I chatted with you about. And so I've had more time to reflect upon it. I think it was foreshadowing again, or just maybe continuing the shadow. In terms of promising or good signs, I would feel more like saying that and meaning it if we didn't see the rest of the performances that we did. It is good that they performed better than they did for facing the Red Roses. As we know later, and we will discuss later, it wasn't an upward trend. It was a little bit better than it was last year, but you always want to be a little bit better than you were the year before. It wasn't big strides. It was a lot of scrapping, and it was, again, a lot of the problems that we just now discussed. There just wasn't attack, even when there were moments that were made, and making moments against the Red Roses is very hard. Even the team that they fielded. And when we spoke the first time, I did talk a little bit about how England rostered versus how we did. I've had more time to think about it, and I think really it didn't matter as much as I thought. Maybe it wasn't that strategic. Maybe it really was just that England prepared better against us than we did against them in terms of research and tactics. And going on by what happened for the rest of the games, it really suggests the preparation wasn't there.
Well, if I look at the stats, so you got things like possession was 50-50, territory was 54-46 in favor of Wales.
What are you doing? What are you doing when you don't have those? When you've got the possession and you aren't doing anything? Well, how many 22 entries were there? Well, okay, that was probably low.
Unfortunately, the official media stats website for the Six Nations doesn't tell me that, but
of course,
because that would be too helpful. But a lot of some of the kind of what you might call meaningless stats Wales were on top of. Some of the ones that's like, well done, doesn't help.
In this situation, the possession at all didn't matter because we didn't do anything almost every time. It really doesn't matter. And in fact, I know that you're going to name the stats for later on, but there are games where we have even more frustrating possession and just producing nothing. It was a failure of production.
That is coming. Oh, trust me. Harley, I mean, 46 points to 10 is about as close as anyone gets to England these days. Are we being a bit just grumpy? Are we just being typical Welsh doom and gloom, or was there progress?
It's a bit of a different thing. So it was an issue, and yes, this was better, and it was a better performance, but it does lead to an underlying issue, which I think in the actual psychology and the Wales team was they got themselves up for this England game, but they didn't do it to teams they were supposedly better than. And then, same we'll talk about, with certain comments from Ewan Kernan and Hannah Jones, the captain. I don't want to sing like individuals, but when these are the figureheads, they're talking about being third. I like they're happy with it. And I think as soon as you become happy with your position, that's when you get complacent and other teams catch you up. And it just sort of think, whereas with England, it's like, right, we've got to chase it. No one's expecting us to do anything. The other thing, this is probably the one where I think Ewan Kernan got selection closest to being right. So for this one, so after the Scotland game, we decided that Alicia Butchers, who admittedly, when we get onto the Italy game, had a fucking stormer there, but still, he benched Alicia Butchers, which is almost unthinkable a year or so ago. And Cecilia, yes. So that he had some players to come on the bench with impact. He started Sian Jones, the less experienced scrum half, but probably closer to the style of scrum half that Becky George is used to. And then you've got Kira Bevan to come off the bench and control the game at the end, which actually in a tighter game would be fantastic. England probably didn't matter as much. But other things like, he brought George Evans in for that physicality, which is something he kept in. But I want to get on to the thing at hand, and Kate Williams, who is an incredibly aggressive physical 6. Whereas Alicia Butchers is definitely, more of that athletic Tipperick-esque 7.
Yeah.
So, the way Tipperick plays 7 is quite how Alicia Butchers plays. She's very fantastic, but huge impact off the bench. And that worked really well. The problem is, and the issue I had is, Cunningham then just kept chopping and changing the scrum half, so he couldn't decide whether he wanted Kira Bevan as a starter or an impact player. He decided that he needs to have Alicia Butchers, Alex Callender, Bethan Lewis. Bethan Lewis got injured in this game, I believe, if not, it was the Ireland game. And then moved George Evans to 8 so that you could have Natalia John and Abby Fleming in the second row. And it was a case of, yes, these are all brilliant players and they should all be playing, but your balance is wrong.
Not together.
It doesn't work.
They had never. I mean, that's a really good one that you pointed out. Was exactly what I was thinking. That 4-5 combination. That 4-5 combination that had almost never played together. I just don't know. I should also just preface, just because I've only said it on the other pod. Alicia Butchers is my favorite player. I think she's phenomenal. I think she should be in every starting thing, but that's not actually true. However, I do like what you were saying with that. Her rugby IQ is off the charts. It honestly is the only one I think might have not been the best. I would have started with her, just because if you also don't have Kira there, somebody needs to be calming people down in the pack. I felt maybe there could have been some more discipline there that is typically led by one of those, but otherwise, yeah. No, I liked this. I liked the ambition. I definitely agree with what Harley was saying with the vision, but then the execution just keeps changing. There's no stability, and this is a team that really thrives on stability and really needs it, because we said that we didn't like that they talked about being third and being complacent there, but like to keep a grip on that for a team that is kind of up one week down the next, perhaps it's okay to meter your expectations a little bit. I guess I'm okay with that excuse to an extent, but we're about to talk about the other games, and that's when I think it goes off the rails.
Yeah, I don't think there's not really much to say. I always ask everybody this, and I think I've already asked you guys this, but Harley, like, how do you even watch a game where the Red Roses are playing in it?
I think it's just one of those ones you just got to appreciate the roots of efficiency. One thing that I would say, though, is Red Roses now are starting to act like an England team, which is actually quite exciting for rugby.
Which is great.
They stopped being nice.
Yes.
They started being dicks about it, and it's great because now I can hate them. I mean this in the nicest way possible. But there's something
dicks
wrong
and
when
making
you like
mistakes.
an England team.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this insane cockiness they have, in my opinion, this is the first Six Nations in a while where they've made like some mistakes, where they've looked beatable at some points. Not to Wales, but to some teams. They are not infallible, I don't think, anymore.
Yeah,
and we have to believe that, because we need to push this forward, because for now this is the Six Nations we have. I know we would like to redesign it. For the men it's one way, for us it's another. We would like to add Spain. I know you guys would like to add Georgia, but they're all saying no. So for while we have what we have, anybody who can rattle England I grudgingly cheer for.
I'm bear in mind with England now. We're talking about the scoreline. They scored more tries than, they scored one fewer try than France, Ireland, and Italy combined.
Yep.
They scored more. They scored. If you take France out, they scored more than the other three home nations in Italy by quite by about half a dozen. Like that. When you're talking about big scorelines, you do have to temper it. But yeah, I said the performance looked great. The problem was after that, it just seemed to all go to pot, and I think Ireland was a real eye opener.
Well, let's talk about Ireland now. So
yes,
Ireland. So this is how I know women's rugby is growing, right? This is the first women's rugby game that I have genuinely been pissed off by. This is the first women's rugby game that I've watched and genuinely been put in a really bad mood for the rest of the day after watching this game. I was watching, I was like, what am I watching here? And like we've alluded to it earlier. The warning signs were there when Johan Cunningham's coming out and saying, we have to believe we can win. And I'm like, sorry, we were in WXV1, they were in WXV3. This should be a formality. Have you not read the news about Ireland women's rugby? It's supposed to be a shambles. It's supposed to be a farce. Why are we talking like, I think if we give it a great shot, I think we could sneak it. It should be we should rock up and turn these over every day of the week. And we were awful in this game. Like, and we women's rugby being such a relatively new product, at least in the consciousness of general rugby fans, you kind of don't want to like go in and hammer your team when they lose. But I think we've gotten to the point now where we have to give them the respect of saying when they were just dreadful and like penalizing them fairly.
With great contract comes great. We get to tell you when you were shit. And especially this Ireland game, I understand that the talk around it was not ideal. Again, you shouldn't be happy being complacent, but there is zero question. And also, I heard through rumory channels that this actually happened, but you can tell they did not prepare. They did not read up on this Ireland team. They heard the same talk you were just mentioning. They took it all to heart. And honestly, it is great that we were third at one point. But going in there and acting like, oh yeah, we got this is exactly why this happened.
What is there even to say about the game itself? I mean, there's 36 points to 5 tries to 1. Aoife Wafer looking like prime, I don't even know what.
Running the show so young. It just if you're gonna be cocky, play like you're cocky. But they were cocky and then they played like they had never played rugby together before.
Yeah.
I think the big issue for me there was Ireland beat us at what we were good at.
Yes.
Which is pack-based stuff. They out-muscled us. They out-scrummed us. They outdid us in was it Sam Monahan? The second row. Seriously, it was like she had the playbook. Which admittedly, looking at the line-out receivers, it was give it to Alicia Butchers, but that's by the by. Literally every line-out, it looked like she knew where the ball was going before Wales did. And I don't know if it's just because they didn't have a council call. I don't know if it's just because, again, we have this quite new second row with Abby Fleming joining, who I'm told is an absolutely wonderful person. Some of my friends back in Devon have known her for a long time, growing up. Admittedly, a bit irrelevant to me as a Wales supporter. I want a second row that works. Those people are great and all, but yeah, and it's just frustrating. You're looking. This is an Ireland team. They haven't really sorted out the finances. It's still €15,000, and you have to live in the centre of Dublin, which is the equivalent of just here you go. I'll give you money for a couple of chip butties a week. That's all you're getting. You got to find a way. They brought in one of the Red Roses coaching team from this dominant period. So what they did is they brought in a coach who knows how to run elite women's rugby and actually gave a shit. Right? That is Ireland giving the tiniest modicum of a shit. Imagine how good they'd be if they actually cared as much as they did with the men's team. That's a scary thought.
That Ireland team also prepared like crazy for this. And the only reason I'm hammering on preparation is because, especially for this one, there were so many ways that this could have at least gone better. Even if it wasn't a win, it didn't have to be a hammering like this. But it's funny that we were talking about Sam Monin, and also we were mentioning Neve Jones earlier, but those are two people who've played with like 65% of the Wales team because they play at Gloucester together. In terms of, looking like you've prepped a lot, part of it is just knowing your opposition. And I've mentioned the prep before, but even if you don't have a lot of money and you have a new coaching staff and you have a team that feels kind of dejected, if you feel ready for a game, which Ireland definitely did, there's something to be said for psychology, especially in women's sport. There's something to be said for the way that they feel right before they take the pitch. And I mean, we saw throughout, even early, and I mean, the one that I think of, even though it's not necessarily emblematic of a good or bad game, but Bethan Lewis going off so early, somebody who is so rarely injured at all and didn't even seem to second thought it. She was just like, nah, I'm out, take me out. Kind of gave you a feeling for how everybody was going in there. And, maybe there's a chance that even they felt unprepared. They couldn't say it because we need to keep party line, but if you're not playing with your head and if you're not playing with much else because you're not the best team on the pitch, the teams are pretty equal, this is what happens. And I do think, if nothing else, hopefully they took a lesson from that, because they said in the following episode of Herstory, the series, you heard Yon saying, yeah, our bad. We didn't do our homework.
Right.
And here's what happened.
What have you made of the Herstory series, just generally? Is it something that you like?
I do. I'm a sap. I think I think it's definitely primarily appealing to other women fans of women's rugby. I know it's overly emotional. It doesn't necessarily show stuff that every rugby fan wants to see.
Well, I will say, I will just jump in there. Welsh rugby fans are very emotional. I think
they are they are. I feel like it's harder to get them to cheer for Wales than against Wales when they're bad.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I got asked on another podcast, what's the identity of Welsh rugby, and how you can imagine like the dichotomy that I was forced to answer with there. But I was like, I said Wales as a nation, as a rugby team, sorry,
very passionate people,
relies on emotion more than any other nation, I think.
It absolutely does. And then more so, I am a woman who played rugby. I say this only from experience, and it's not that like women are ruled by their emotions or whatever, but it is absolutely true. And I think it was John Mitchell who said it, and I think I've actually mentioned it before, but it's a good, I think, picture of the difference is that men need to win to play well. They feel good, and they're happy when they win. Women need to feel good and feel ready and not happy, but feel good and confident to play well. To get that for Welsh players, yeah, I mean, it's hard when you're doing badly, and we saw George Evans and others come out being like, please don't leave, please don't hang us from the rafters, we can do better, please stick with us. But like, if you know Welsh rugby, they're gonna stick around, they're gonna complain, they're gonna yell at you, but this is their favorite, they're not going anywhere.
We're gonna complain.
Oh yeah,
Complaining now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, we have whole podcasts about complaining. But the same way as your parents and teachers told you when you were a kid, the only reason we complain and have podcasts at all is because we care.
Exactly.
You guys care so much.
It really do.
I think I can't remember who it was, but I know there was one said the one thing they said is the worst thing that could ever happen is when the fans stop complaining about results.
Because it means they're ignoring
because
you.
It means because as soon as you get to apathy, that's it, and you're probably not going to get them back. As soon as you're like, oh, I don't care. And I'll be honest, there are points with Wales at the moment. The men's team, I'm just like,
yes,
I just don't care anymore. I'd rather just support Cardiff.
Yeah,
and it gets. Yeah, you don't want to get to that warning point, and I don't want that to happen for this women's team, because it's actually a team I think could really, they've got a chance to be better, even better than the men's team.
Yeah, I used to care way too much about international rugby. I used to feel sick.
Yeah, same. I was just gonna say same, and then I got blood pressure medication, and now I'm better.
Okay, right. So moving on from the game itself then, and then following the game comes, as you alluded to there, the open letter from the team captain, generally a sign of things not going well. What was, Julie, what was your reaction when that came out?
It wasn't necessary. I think it put Hannah in a shitty spot. I don't personally, and this is just a personal thing, not really like something I've taken from reading or from like knowing and talking to people, but I don't think athletes really owe fans that level of, I'm not your parent, I'm not her parent or teacher, and I'm disappointed in her, and I want her to tell me she'll do better. I assume that she's going to try to do better. It's her job. Clearly she loves it. Clearly they all love it, or they wouldn't be there. And we all know what the Wales women have been through. None of them would be there if they didn't want to be there. And anybody who is like kind of a fan or more severe like us definitely knows. It's not anything we didn't know, so I do feel that it was kind of a bit, maybe it was for catharsis. If so, then I take that back. If it made her feel better saying that, like just she wanted to get it out, okay. Knowing Hannah Jones, I don't think that's the case. She's not she's not Rachel Malcolm. She's not all about like the talking and the symbols. She leads by action. I have my own opinions of who should be the captain or
Mm,
who is the captain, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
We'll
Uh,
save that for the. We'll save that bit for the Italy game, I think.
yeah.
yeah, I think we should, because
But
everybody agrees with me, including Johan Cunningham. Um, but yeah, in terms of having done it, if it made her feel better, great. If it brought something for her or for the rest of the team, at first I thought it was completely useless, and then I saw Georgia Evans come out on her own social and give us a bit of a speech. If more of them feel that way that they wanted to, then absolutely. But I don't know. I feel like you don't really need to like twist your own knife,
I
and
guess
I worry that's what she did.
I guess from their perspective, this is going to be their first time really being scrutinized in that way because of the
And that
growth. Because with the growth of the women's game, and we were so good last year, this is
Yes.
the first time that they'll have experienced a lot of people being mad at them, basically.
And that's really why I think Georgia especially did what she did. Georgia is definitely more an emotional player. She has no problems expressing herself, and we know exactly who she is, both on and off the pitch. And I do feel that definitely, like for somebody like her, she would want to do that. Um, but I think it goes back to what we were saying before, which is just, this is brand new for these girls. It's brand new for almost everybody except basically the Red Roses and the Black Ferns. Um, so, growing pains. I wish she didn't have to because I do think that it put undue scrutiny on a team that really didn't need it at the time. Um, but everything is kind of a learning. Definitely everything in this tournament was a learning moment. So, you know, I'm sorry she felt she had to do it. If she wanted to do it, great. If not, please don't make them do that again because it just
Yeah.
makes them feel worse.
From
And then when we watched them play France, we know how they felt.
Yeah. Well, just to close this off, the Scarlets captain did the same kind of thing. So for those who don't follow the
That's right. You
men's
were
game,
telling me.
Scarlets are bad. And
Yeah.
the captain came out and said, "Oh, trust us, the players are hurting, the players are hurting." And I was like, "I'm hurting too. How about I'll sit here and I'll hurt, and
I know.
you be good at rugby." Like,
Exactly. I'm going to tune into your game next week no matter what, so please hit the gym. That's all you need to do.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so second game from the end, the penultimate game. It was a nilling, our only nilling of the tournament in
It
Cardiff,
was.
France 40, Wales 0. Harley,
are only nilling for quite a far back. Like there are even games against the Red Roses, Pete Red Roses, and we've still managed to put points on the board.
hmm,
Yep.
It was unacceptable. It's as simple as that.
This
Even
was one of their worst performances, I think.
I think just
I'd
generally,
be,
as in
I think
rugby, if
even
you get
amateur
nilled at home, it
levels.
should be a refund to the fans. That's all rugby.
That's when you should apologize.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about that time when we came to Scarlets and nilled you. I was like, can the kind of fans get discount on the next time? Or do they have to pay extra if your team was the one who did the niddling?
Yeah. Anyway, back to this. So there was so Eleanor Snowshill went on Scrum 5 afterwards and said, no, there's progress. This is better. What, Harley, what was your take on that?
So
I
disingenuous.
think I get what they're saying, because they were showing the ambition to move the ball, but what it looked like was they just suddenly decided they were going to move the ball and try these back moves and phase plays. But clearly, and going back to Julia's point on preparation, clearly they hadn't practiced the catch pass element enough. It was a bit like but the problem is at international level you don't have the game time to develop this. This was the issue with Pivax Wales. It's the issue with Gatlin trying to bring in the things. And, I'm going to go with what Cardiff tried to do at the start. If you looked at the first few games that season, we could not get ball more than 2 or 3 passes away before someone dropped it, because it just hadn't had the time to get into position and know where the other person is to make sure that they're going to catch that pass. It's no coincidence that Cardiff are getting most of the way there. Unfortunately, it's the last pass we drop in. But we ended up, I've dropped my head up from that. But we've sort of gotten on there, and Wales haven't had the time to do that sort of thing.
Julia, what about for you? Did you think this was progress? Do you think we were better?
No, I think I'm right on the page with Harley. What I kept thinking was, he put it into words better than I did actually, but they were trying to play with the jouet. First of all, that's France's thing. Second of all,
don't jouet against France.
No, you can't riz the Riz Masters. And a charitable reading of this would be that that's what they were trying to do, but really it came down to it looks like you can't pass. It looks like you can't attack. And just like when you have those issues against the Red Roses, when it's against France, it's extremely stark. And that's exactly why this happened. I can't even say that it was a lack of confidence, because it's not like they didn't know what they were getting into with France. And I don't think that they went in with the same cockiness that they did with Ireland. It would be ridiculous if they did. So I don't think they did. But at the same time, they also just didn't even do the things that they do well. France is a team, at least France's current iteration, they are having some discipline problems. They are having some pack, not much. It's France. They're some of the best scrummagers in the world. But, they also showed signs of fallibility in this tournament. I don't think now it's going to be Wales that's going to unseat them, but I do think that they can be unseated. That said, we didn't show many cracks in their armor. And it's one of the things that we could have done. Again, I didn't think that we were going to beat them, but I didn't think that we were going to get nilled. I think it was a lack of preparation, maybe a little bit of lack of confidence, but really just the basics weren't executed. It's not very smart sounding to say, but when it's simple.
Yeah. It's just I genuinely think that both England and France had the same approach to playing Wales, which was let them have the ball,
which is expose them,
and don't let them get within 5 meters, because if they get within 5 meters, then one of their front row will crash over. Which
is fine because we barely have proficient backs.
Yeah,
it's not hard to keep them out of the 5 meter.
Yeah, and if a team's got 38% territory and beating you 40 points to 0, that's I've got spoons sharpened than that.
and on top of it, if every team knows what's going to happen when you get to the 5 meters is it's going to Sicilia to a Plateau, yeah, they're gonna just beat you before you even get to the 5 meters.
Just on that, I've got the match stats up in front of me, and according to them, Cecilia Tuipulotu made 79 meters, carried 79 meters in this game. Does that sound right? That's a lot.
Yeah. If you look at
it, carried a lot
of midfield and sort of first phase moves, she's used almost like the way Cardiff uses carry.
12 carries, 79 meters. That's ridiculous.
It was transient carrying. It was like carrying between phases.
If I look at meters gained, 38.
Yeah.
So okay, so there's a lot of meters in.
The game wasn't good.
It's sort of like she catches in the midfield and runs into the line, or she'll be the tip on, and that And that
She
gives you
wasn't doing
those-
doing Sarah Byrne runs. She wasn't getting it and going 30 meters.
Yeah, it wasn't a prop in the wing. It was a prop in a centre, more
No.
sort of
Exactly.
role.
Which
Al
is
Cal
fine
got
because
$76.
she runs like
Yeah.
one, so I don't mind.
Al-Cal is more like a traditional wide forward, edge forward,
Yeah.
who actually throughout this whole tournament has been fantastic in everything she did.
As
And
hard-
she's topped on things like tackles, joint
I
top
was just gonna
tackles,
say.
second top on turnovers. I think if you look at carries and tackles as a combined stat, I think she comes out top.
Al Cal.
Certainly second. Yeah, Al-Cal.
Yeah, by miles. Well, because I did a post about it after the game. Joanna Grises for France.
Crusade, yeah.
Grisey. She had an incredible game.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
She was like top of everything. Just as an aside, so doing my stats posts and things, I have to find pictures of the players to do. And for the men's, it's easy, but for the women's, it's sometimes a little bit tricky, and you have to remove the backgrounds itself. And if they've all got like ponytails and things, like removing the background from all that is a bit of a nightmare. But a lot of the French players and there's a lot of the Scottish players as well, weirdly, had like proper like professional looking portraits posing with the ball and doing like the blue steel and things, and that was quite funny. I'll tell you what else was funny. The Ireland players, some of those players clearly love having their picture taken and like got really prepared for it. And some of the players are just like, take my picture and I want to go back and do more practice.
Which is the correct response.
I love it.
If you see my Sidmouth
I
rugby post photo for this year.
I love it when and fortunately, of all the teams in my experience, and I follow so many of them on social, but Ireland especially is really big. A lot of them are really big on social media, especially Niamh Jones. But of course, Niamh is like myth popularity, loves all the stuff like that. But she also captured some other people at Media Day, and they hate it. They were grumpy. It's the same thing as like we're doing the Bronco today. They're like, you know what, I'd rather do the Bronco. So
Aoife Wafer's squad photos are literally just like thumbs up.
I knew there's a reason I loved her. I genuinely, I want her to be my adopted daughter.
I'm just saying the Irish Welsh, like, you know that it is like bone deep, like deeply. You understand? Obviously not men's rugby. Oh my God, please do not at me. Not men's rugby, but culturally.
Actually, at least with players, there tends to be. They say there's a bit more. The players say there's more of a rivalry with Ireland than England.
It's because they kick our ass up and down the URC every year.
I was going to say it's URC for sure.
And now during the Six Nations as well.
Yeah.
That thing I hear about the URC, it makes me want to stay away from them.
Anyway, let's move on before we upset
Yeah,
anybody.
let's speaking of, oh no, actually no, the next one gets to be kind of nice.
Yeah. So Harley, you were there in the stadium.
Yep.
By all accounts, because I spoke to Sian, shout out Sian, Julia's good friend. And she was there as well. 10,000 people in the crowd, great. In a 70,000 seater stadium, bit weird.
At the rugby stadium.
This is where I feel like we really went and did our own thing and maybe should have looked at what England and actually Ireland are doing quite well.
Go Phil Cap.
Yeah, 10,000 pounds would be the most bouncing.
Parker Scarlets is a perfect venue.
Parker Scarlets would have been great.
No one can get there though. It's bloody miles away.
It is fucking miles away.
Because it's
so
annoying.
far.
Also, I can't do the double header with the Cardiff game then.
That's true.
It's actually good. I bumped into an edit whilst I was there, so I've got this one little anecdote. So I was in the WRU shop because my friend Sam, who was wanted to buy a jersey and whatever, and I went to have a look at stashes. The Barbarians training top from Macon is fucking gorgeous, by the way. If it wasn't 70 quid, I would have bought it there and then. So we're there, and I bumped into a Scotland fan, and he caught my eye instantly because I saw he had a World Cup jersey, but it was the 2021 World Cup.
Ooh.
Hey!
So it was a Scottish fan, and so I started talking to him, and he actually went to New Zealand for the Women's World Cup.
Yeah.
The 2020 World Cup played in 2022 as its official title. But actually talking about him about it, yeah, that was quite an interesting one because obviously there were quite a few Edinburgh fans who came and decided to buy tickets on the day.
Yeah.
So it was an unofficial double header, which actually worked quite well. But yeah, it was too small. I sent a video to Hugh and went, "This is the weirdest atmosphere I've ever been in at any
That was what Shan said as well.
Any game, even when I've gone to watch Cardiff versus Ospreys at the what was then a Liberty, it just felt cavernous. When the game started going on, we managed to get, there was a bit of noise coming up. It was quite nice because it was also the women's plate finals and plate bowl cup finals as well. So I think there were a lot of community club women's teams there as well, which sort of helped. But it was just empty, like 10,000 people in Capping bouncing.
Exactly.
10,000 people in Principality was pretty dire. But you know what we should have done is maybe look at going to Parker Scarlets, maybe the .com, maybe, you know, even probably not Dave Perry. Dave Perry's too small now already.
Yeah.
But or you know, Cardiff City Stadium, whatever.
Not the .com.
What it needed to be, if you'd gone to a slightly bigger stadium. I think so. Jess Hayden said it on I think it was a either Rock and Roll or on another podcast, maybe the podcast.
It was probably
England built the right to fill Twickenham by going around all the different venues. So they play games in Sandy Park. So you'd get the Devon and Cornwall people going there. They played up in Doncaster. You know, they've played games in Doncaster. They've played in Newcastle. You know, that emotional farewell game for Sarah Hunter last Six Nations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've
And they're
played,
doing it for the World Cup too.
Gate, which again is slightly bigger, so you're getting gradually bigger and bigger stadiums, and then they have their big game. So the game you thought most people wanted to go. I thought if we didn't do that. We moved down from North Wales down to Cap. That's basically the only real move. The women's team hasn't really moved around much more than that. Certainly not since I've been regularly following it. So
other than the Celtic
really
Challenge,
dragged
honestly.
people to you. So I think sorry, it's just that, and then you picked the Italy game, which in women's rugby terms actually is a very tasty fixture because they're actually quite close level. But the problem is a lot of people who you're trying to pull into this are used to. I mean, I know we are trying to bring up a bigger demographic, but they're thinking, "Oh, Wales, Italy, well, that's not going to be a great game." Like if it was Wales, Scotland, or Wales, France, I feel like just psychologically they think, "Oh, that's got to be a good game."
That's a good point. Maybe they should have picked the Scotland game first up for this rather than.
Also, then it would have all been all the hope. So I don't think it helped then that
exactly
right at the end, and we had all these.
We would have had hope.
Well, and Cap being like the stadium for Wales women, it would have just kind of fit.
I mean, I don't know if that part of the issue was because Cardiff have primacy because it's
had something.
It's not their stadium, but they're the main tenants. But again, I would have quite happily done that as a double head. I know they want to get away from double headers, and I know there are some women content creators, you know, people who focus on Alice Soper being one of them. You know, not a big fan of the double header.
Although I was just gonna say I have talked to Alice about that before, and it's actually pretty interesting. And I should note
get exactly where she's coming from with it. Fine.
Sure, but there is a crucial difference between saying that in New Zealand and saying that in the UK. I mean, because of the crowds and also the sizes of the rugby stadiums in New Zealand. But it was interesting, actually, that you brought up the guy that you ran into who went down there. A big problem and a big thing that people complained about at the World Cup 21 played in 22 was that they picked all the wrong stadiums, and it ended up looking like they had really crappy crowds. And people said that the atmosphere was really off. It's one of the biggest complaints people had. And in terms of like the information collection that they got after from people like Alice, was please think about smaller. First of all, we want to be more in the women's rugby is a community thing, especially in New Zealand. But we want to be among the community more. It doesn't need to be an elite thing yet. We aren't the All Blacks. Like, yes, the Black Ferns are probably the best team on the planet, along with the Red Roses. But even still, we know we're not going to pack it out. We want to feel that atmosphere. We want to thrive off of it. And we've seen that. Well, we saw in the World Cup, and we've seen now. Not that they're rock stars, that they need the crowd yelling to play well, but it helps.
Yeah, it's such a Southern Hemisphere thing. Like Australia, South Africa, New Zealand all seem to get it wrong with stadium sizes, apart from the Stormers.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what Alice was going for.
The Bulls, we're going to get distracted. So sticking to this, right? Wales played Italy is the point, and we won again, as we said. The three try scorers were the three starting front rows, because I didn't get to watch this game, so I was checking the scores on my phone, and I looked down and I was like, "Huh, that checks out.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you texted me and you were like, "Hey, were they all forwards?" I was like, "They were."
Yeah. So
Yep.
I just want to mention her. So Cecilia Tuipulotu, whenever we like joked about going within 5 meters, whenever within 5 meters, I'm always like, just give it to
We know
Cecilia.
where it's going.
She will score. She's got a better chance of scoring than somebody else. Sometimes I feel like they give it to someone else from 5 meters just to let them have a go and then go,
Hey, Kira Bevan from 5 meters is dangerous, but
Brendan Pierce as well is also as good
oh
as
my God,
Cecilia
yes,
from that.
so
And
Cecilia
totally
she was
unsung.
fantastic against Italy.
Totally
Cecilia
unsung.
is the well, yeah. So I'll come on to that. Cecilia is like the superstar of women's rugby in Wales. She's the one that everybody knows. She's still like 20, 22.
Mm.
And is she? Is it a kind of? I don't want to. I'm not going to like come up with a specific analogy, but is it a case of she's shot to notoriety really young, and there's a bit of extra hype there, or is that like, oh no, she is the real deal? What's your guys' take on it?
She's the real deal. I think she I wouldn't say
Yeah,
she'd walk into the Red Roses team, but I think if she was an option for England, she'd definitely be getting a few caps. Like her scrummaging's fantastic, her ball carrying's excellent. She offers a different dimension to some of the other tight heads, which is something successive coaches like, is having a player that you can switch the game up for. You know, we might talk about it in a bit about, you know, with obviously the upcoming Women's Lions tour.
Mm-hmm.
I think she'd easily make the squad, maybe the side. I wouldn't guarantee it, but because Red Roses have that many good players, but
yeah.
there aren't many loose heads in the women's game who can get the better of her at the moment. And I said, and that ball carrying is just a raw power that, you know, you can't replace it. It's like you can do all the fancy trickery and attack you want, but there is no substitute in rugby for being able to smash through someone.
She can do now at her age and her experience what Sarah Byrne took many years to really nail down. And, you know, not that Sarah Byrne is particularly old or, you know, past her career or anything, but she certainly developed the skills that she has now. Also happens to be that they both started in the centers. But I mean, also, it doesn't hurt that she comes from a dynasty. Luckily, there is another
That helps.
Tuipulotu coming up. Her sister is on the U18s team, so we've got another one coming. Yeah, and it looks like she's staying in the backs, which is going to be great. I can't imagine what it would be like having her and her sister, and then Gwenllian and her sister is coming through, and Nell Metcalf's sister is coming through. So it's going to be even fewer last names on the team sheet.
I've heard, so I was listening to one of our sister pods, Ospreys Aria this morning, and they were talking about how, obviously with Felix Tia coming back to Dragons to coach, both his daughters are currently playing netball but are starting to play rugby. And Felix Tia was not a small man. He was not known for this, so I imagine it was. But also Willis Halaholo's daughter. So there's going to be a whole Pacific Island Welsh dynasty coming for the women's suite, which would be, that would be utterly terrifying at any level of conditioning. And I think Ray Lilo's daughters play rugby as well, and again would all be Welsh qualified. And you're like, we did have a good generation of Pacific Island players in Wales for a while.
So
and now all their
the team
offspring
sheet
are
is going to
here.
be like Jones, Williams, Jones, Tuipulotu,
Halaholo,
Halaholo, Lilo, Tia.
Here's Halaholo. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great, which we're looking forward to.
Hey, it works for Scotland's men's team.
I was just going to say now we can start having all of the bullshit arguments that Scotland has about, well, he's not really Scottish.
I don't remember seeing any roof discourse for this game, by the way. Like that really took the edge off the event for me.
It's true. Sure. No roof discourse and very little ref discourse. I don't know what Wales is doing, but get on it.
I have one comment about the officiating team.
Go on.
Right.
Yeah.
The touch judge, I'm not sure what her name was, but she was taller than every single other person on that pitch. And it just was weird seeing an official being the biggest person on the pitch. It wasn't I said it was one of the touch judges, but I couldn't tell you the name because I've not seen it before.
Yeah, I know. Was she blonde?
I believe so, yes.
It might have been Kat Roche from America. She was over there. She was the ref for our Ireland game. So if that was the same person. Yeah, she's quite tall. She's from Texas. She's quite impeding. She, in fact, just got named to the Olympics. We're very happy for her.
Oh,
We've
cool.
never had American refs make it to the Olympics.
Shout out as well to Holly Davidson getting
Yes.
the South
Yes.
Africa versus Portugal head refereeing gig.
Oh my God.
She's great. She's like
She's universally beloved. By the way, one of the few refs I have never seen anybody complain about, even in the men's game.
I
that
have
she
seen
has
refs
ref.
complain about
Okay.
her in the men's game.
Okay.
But with
Are
that
they
doesn't
South
mean
African?
anything.
Are
Everyone
they
complains
South
about refs.
African? Are they Irish? Uh, those are the two
No comment.
I own.
I'll be very mean and say she's the only competent Scottish ref I've encountered.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah, I like Holly. I mean, our sides, my team's come on the
Huge
wrong side of her,
fan.
but I've never had an issue with the way she's played thing. I mean, we also talked about Olympic refs. Ben, just because it is a Welsh pod, Ben Breakspear's been selected to do the
Yes,
Olympic
I
sevens
saw
as well.
that.
So
No, that was
good for
fantastic.
him. He's a young developing ref.
An
Definitely
extremely
will,
cool
but
last name.
Fantastic. And my other favorite ref, just before we move off this one, is the incredibly overly polite Canadian ref, who is just like, "I'm sorry, I'm going to have to penalise you there."
Well, okay. So Maggie Cogger-Orr she represents New Zealand, but she's from Canada, so she sounds Canadian. And then there's Julianne Zussman, who is the former Canadian player, who now I'm trying to think of who would apologize more. It's probably Maggie. I couldn't see Zuss apologizing, but yes, I do love that. And I mean, I'm a huge Sarah Cox fan as well. She has a fantastic podcast and also very good at refereeing.
And also talking about it's weird how all the good referees are women. But Amy Barrett-Ferron, despite her little viral moment in the under 20s,
okay, I was going to say,
I think she's a fan because she was also the woman in the middle for this game, and I think she's a fantastic ref.
Half the people loved that, and half the people didn't love that. And it's so crazy, the gender divide of who liked it and who didn't.
Get over yourselves. Like, they're like, oh, she talked to them like kids. It's an under-20s rugby team.
They are kids.
So they were acting like kids.
And it worked.
It did.
Let's be fair, we need more of it for the senior game.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, it's a little theater.
Exactly. Anyway.
It's not like she made it all about herself like other refs have ended up when they start drinking their own Kool-Aid, but...
Naming no names.
Yeah, no. Going on to the game, it was a very much deserved win. I was talking to Hugh about the warm-ups. I found them quite interesting. So when I was there watching, because I'm one of those sad people who will watch teams warming up. One of the things
I like doing that. It's fun.
Where I stand in Cardiff Arms Park is it's the away sides where the away side do their warm-up. So it's always interesting seeing what moves, and if you pick up anything that they, you think, oh, that's actually a specific thing they've got trying to target us here and whatever. But it was looking at Italy spent a good 5-10 minutes just blowing out drills, getting them perfect. Wales were throwing the ball, so it was the hooker just throwing the ball to see if they could make it to the 15-meter, and there was almost no height on it. And you're like, why have you not got like it? I know the game's not pretty well funded, but I'm sure Robin McBride can lend one of his little hoops with it, one of his poles with a hoop on it, so you can get your height targets. And there was a lot of just ambling around. I said, I don't know if it's because of how much they train during the week and then they just do a softer warm up. But the words I said to Hugh were, Italy looked like how our first team warm up for a game. But when I say I mean Sidmouth RFC, the club I play for. The Wales looked more like the warm-up I do with the second team, which is, and I only just about do the second team, and most of us are old buggers who are mostly broken, so if we do too much for warm-up, we can't actually play.
Yep.
So, and it was just, that looked a bit odd, and I think, I don't know what you guys meant of maybe the celebrations at the end of that game.
You've been one of the questions.
Sorry. Sorry, too preemptive. I'm still not even. It's many weeks after it, and I still don't know what I make of it. Because I sort of get what I'm glad they're showing their relief, and one of the things that I find quite endearing about the women's game compared to the men's is they're not afraid to show their emotions as much as men. Where it's, that horrible toxic masculinity of we must. The only good emotion is the only good emotions are laughter and anger. Anything else is terrible. And for me, I feel like the relief, but I'm glad. I think they went a bit too far.
I'm glad they felt relief. They deserved it. They deserved the win. It's great. It wasn't a storming win. That was a barely win. And it was a hard fought one, and it was not necessarily even against the best Italy we've ever faced. And or rather the best Italy that played this tournament. I get it. I don't begrudge it to them. First of all, they're also really young and they're all newly professional. Like there are a lot of things that contributed to why it perhaps didn't look that great. That said, I'm glad they had it. I hope they very quickly celebrated and went to go study, went to go see what went wrong. Because while some things went right in that Italy game, even then, a lot went wrong. There's a lot to learn. If nothing else, that's I think what they can take from this.
Yeah, if it came from a place of they have an affinity for Johan Cunningham and they were happy for him because they know the stick or the pressure that he was under, then okay. But
Then okay.
mm,
I don't think that was it though. I don't
no.
know.
We don't know. But in terms of the game, the victory itself and the game itself, is this a case of come good at the end, or was it a case of papering over cracks?
Papering over
I
cracks.
think we're quite lucky that Beatrice Rigoni didn't have her best day off the tee.
Yep, that was what it was. Honestly, a lot of people did not have their best game in that Italian side. That was really what it was.
Even on the pitch, I think literally if Beatrice Rigoni was a little bit, her kicking was a bit better.
If she was more on,
but I'm not putting it all on her. But it was. Yeah.
Oh no! I was going to say also if Maria had a bit more control of her back line, usually I feel that usually she drives the attack a little bit, with a little bit more intention. It's the end of the tournament. Everybody's tired, body's hurt. And I wouldn't begrudge Italy if they went into that thinking that Wales was an easy target. They still were. I don't want to say it was luck. This is my team. I care a lot about them. I know how hard they work. But it was just a little more than luck. There's skill there. Obviously, they worked hard for it. They were beaten down, but that win was eked out.
I think that's fair. So that's all of the games.
So just before, I just want to add one thing about the win being eked out. As someone who's been following a team where we've been narrow losers for 98% of our games this season, I'd take an eked out win right now. So, actually, that's the way to do it. But yeah, so we'll move on. That was just the only point I wanted to make there.
And bringing it back to Cardiff, like always. Anyway.
Yep.
So just the key stat to the Six Nations then for Wales women. Not pretty, obviously. So second bottom for total points. By second bottom, one more than Scotland, but Scotland won more games. So, bottom for tries scored, 7 in 5 games. Obviously, bottom for try assists as well. Try assists is a weird stat that makes no sense because there's 7 tries scored, 3 try assists. So 4 tries happened by magic, apparently. Basically near the bottom of everything. But second bottom for meters carried, second bottom for meters gained, bottom for offloads and bottom for line breaks, I think is the telling one. We've kind of hammered it home during this. Just the attack and the back line just doesn't fire. Harley stole my stat of 1 winger's try in a year. That's not rugby. Bottom for kicks in play as well, which is a weird one. I think that speaks again to how much territory teams let us have, knowing that it wasn't going to be a problem.
And I just pick up on that one stat because it's a really 10 stat, because if you look at the whole idea of, when it goes with Cunningham's idea of taking Gloucester Hartbury and building around that, Blakey George is a fantastic 10 when it comes to seed play. Actually, I mean, not as good as Eleanor Snowsill was at setting the back line, but her key stat, the thing everyone was really looking forward to, was her kicking game. And not just the distance you can get, which actually I think Wales still are a much shorter kicking distance than a lot of other teams, which hampers you. But also just the variety of kicks and the clever and putting it, and we did not rely on that at all. And that, in a bit, you can look at a team like, sorry, we keep going to men's game. That's where most of my rugby data comes from. If you look at Italy, not the Six Nations won before, fantastic attack, but kept losing all the games because they were just pinned their own half because they didn't have the kicking to match it. As much as everyone hates kicking, it's probably the most important thing to get right, because it will get, if your scrum is shit, if you can keep it, if you only conceding scrums in the opposition 22, that's fine because they can only get to about halfway because you just keep pegging them back. If your lineout's not great, again, pegging it down in there. If you lose a lineout in their 22, they've still got to go the whole length of the pitch. But when you can't kick, you're stuck in your own half, so you're trying to play up the field, which means you've got to do more phases to get the same distance as a kick would. So you're more likely to knock the ball on. You're more likely to concede a penalty for sealing off. You're more likely to concede penalties in defence. And then you've got these entries in the 22. So you're inviting all this pressure on. And it's just so bizarre. So Dan, one of the co-hosts of the Cutter Pod, is something he brings up constantly is, why are we not using Cleaky Jaws to our strengths, which is a fantastic kicking 10? And yeah, it's the fact, and it does show up with the stats. Then if we're not kicking, it's like, well, why are we not? It's an obvious thing.
Sorry, go on, Julia.
Oh no, all good.
Okay. The stats as we get towards the end of the stats page kind of tell the story of a team that has a lot of possession but doesn't do much with it, because it's tackles made fewest. Now, anyone who knows me knows I'm not a fan of tackle stats, but if you make the fewest tackles, to me that means that you had the ball a lot, and we believe that that's true. And if you look at ruck arrivals as well, Wales second top for attacking ruck arrivals, top for defensive ruck arrivals. There was a lot of ball in play for Wales and not a lot happening. So yeah, we kind of hammered it home there. So let's kind of switch it up and talk about some positives if we can. So Julia, who were the standout players for Wales? Who were the stars of the show?
Alcal. It was Alex Callender. It was definitely the Alex Callender show for most of this. We did point it out. Butch had some really big shining moments. I just always mention her. It wasn't, particularly, but Gwenflein Piers had an amazing tournament. She often does. She, I think, is, especially when you're playing next to Tuipulotu, it's sometimes hard to see.
The stats are actually slightly better than Tuipulotu's.
I think they might. I would absolutely believe that for this tournament at least. She's just a workhorse. I love watching her at club and country. I think she had a great game. And of course, we've talked about it before, but we can always mention it just briefly again. But Gwennon Hopkins, great job, great debut, definitely promising. Not necessarily that we need another amazing back row. I wish we could turn some of those amazing back rows into amazing other things.
Yeah, this Welsh rugby.
Welsh rugby. But for a problem to have, that's a pretty good one. So and we need people all the time. We just saw Shawned retire. We're gonna keep seeing people coming in and out, and there's nobody really, I think, in that target right now. But it's been a concern for fans or for anybody watching Wales women, is the pathway and the pipeline of people coming in. It's really good to see that they're coming. I think we're going to see more in the Celtic Challenge, and I think as long as we keep using that as a good developmental ground when we can, yeah, that'll be providing more people, hopefully, like Gwennon.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, for me, Alcal easily the best player. So let me just see if I can find some Alcal stats. They're not hard to find because she's at the top.
Yep.
It's all about kind of
tackles and rucks.
Tackles and ruck arrivals. So 4 breakdowns.
She's quite high up in carries as well.
4 breakdown steals, 39 defensive ruck arrivals. Georgia Evan actually.
She's a jackal queen.
Ruck arrivals. She's here somewhere for attacking ruck arrivals as well. 73, just 73 in 5 games. Tackles made, joint top with Alex Stewart. Just again, if we're talking about non-Red Roses, carries 70 top, outright top, more than Eddie Kildun. Gwennon Pierce 3rd as well, so backing that up. If we're talking about women's Lions players who aren't English, probably Alex Callender is Wales's candidate, along with Cecilia and Gwennon. So Harley, what where do Wales go from here? At the moment, we don't know whether we're in WXV1 or, sorry, don't know if we're in 2 or
2 or
3.
3.
Yeah, so obviously we've got to do the playoff against Spain, who have been very good in the Women's Rugby Europe Championship.
Walked it, absolutely destroyed it.
Yeah, I mean, if women's rugby wanted to do something different, I would be considering maybe making this league a full league structure and actually having promotion relegation throughout, and actually
Yes.
having someone like Spain coming in would be interesting.
Yeah.
I said from what Julie was saying off air, unofficially, it's going to be end of June, this playoff, which is annoying because I'm on holiday and I'd quite like to have gone. I think for me the bigger thing is I don't know whether it's an addition or we need to change an outright change, but we need something in the coaching staff because
Yep.
we have these, the issues that were there last year when we did quite well, which were fine because we were able to physically dominate the teams around us. We got exposed in WXV1 last year. We showed, I think, actually in a bit in the World Cup as well. Actually, we showed that our attack wasn't brilliant. Defensively out wide, we get cut up quite a lot. So I think that's one thing. I think Philippa Tetti on Scrum 5 podcast, she did say an addition's probably better than an outright change because
Well, that's what they said they're going to spend the Lions grant on, isn't it,
Right.
coaches?
So this money that the Lions grant is, so that's developmental coaches. So I don't know how that translates over to thing. Now, this is something where Rob Howley needs to start putting his finger out because he's technically performance director of rugby. So he's supposed to, normally it's linking transition for the men's under 20s, men's women, but it should also cover the women's remit as well, as far as I've read the job description. So I think we need to get that sorted. I think there's only a few weeks left of the PWR left. The problem is that a lot of that Wales squad are going to be involved in the playoffs because I don't see anyone beating Gloucester Hartbury at the moment.
The Bears aren't doing half bad either.
Yeah, but I've just got.
Can't think I can't think about the Bears without your "this brings me joy, this does not bring me joy" meme that you made.
Does not bring me joy.
As a Bristol Bears fan of both the men's and the women's, I'm very much in the does not bring me joy camp sometimes. Although
not right now.
Season has been quite good.
I was gonna say not the men right now.
Men's actually picked up towards the end of the season. It's gotten dry, sunny weather, therefore jouet. So I think for that we've got to sort of hopefully having a bit longer together for WXV. There's a chance to get some of these attack patterns in place. I think they need to focus on a kicking game. That I think it actually looked quite good when they had. I believe it was Stephen Myler, and actually at various points as well, Lee Halfpenny have come in as dedicated kicking coach to work with the Kaylee Powells and the Slow Sills, Shaky George. Now it'd be Sophie Hesketh. But also with Scrum Masters. I think we need to get that kicking game sorted because that's going to ease a lot of pressure on us whilst we're getting our attack to click. The defence coach, Stina Livin, this system just does not work. It doesn't. In the Italy game, we got cut out wide and we were caught with our winger literally she was in line with the posts.
Yep.
That should never happen. There's no defence system with that. They never do it. Even the most aggressive blitz defences, the winger is never more than about 20 metres in from the touchline because if they are going to be that aggressive shooter, they're coming from wide to it. You come from out to in because you can see the play better, and usually you're out of the attack line, and that's where it's most effective. So, I think we've got to get. I think some very serious questions have to be asked by the coaching team if we lose to Spain and we end up in WXV3, because these women are too good to be playing the likes of Kazakhstan and Kenya. As not disrespect on these teams.
And Madagascar.
They are. Madagascar, they are ranked a fantastic game from the clips I've seen. But these are teams that even the men's teams are rank amateurs. So you can imagine what the women's sides are like, and even how much less funding they're on. If I told you that we were playing Kazakhstan, most people I know who even know rugby would be like, Kazakhstan have a rugby team. It would be incredulous to them. The idea that's where. where we are on
Hmm.
this level of the women's game, you know, we've got to be in the WXV2, and we should be pushing. You know, ideally, we should be pushing Scotland to the top. So, you know, basically say this Six Nations was a blip. Don't know if things went wrong. We just weren't quite ready for the pressure. We're going away. We're doing this right. And then I think, and then if we carry on building, then it's okay. Yeah, blip. If we start losing and we end up in WXV3, or we really struggling in WXV2, I don't want to sack coaches, but something, you know, there is something fundamentally wrong, and it's either the players or it's the coaches, and it's easier to get new coaches in than new players.
Julia,
Yeah.
we're going to hop in the time machine and we're going to go into December of this year, and you're at an office party and it's Secret Santa, and the hat's going round and there's loads of names in the hat, and you put your hand in the hat and you pull out Wales women's rugby team, and that's who you've got to buy a present for. What present are you getting for Wales women's rugby team ahead of the 2025 Six Nations?
A few more professional contracts and an attack coach.
That's a
Just a
good
little bit.
answer.
Yeah, just a little bit more money, and someone willing to change direction on that front.
That's a good answer, and I can't disagree. Right, so we've reached the end of our journey to and through the Women's Six Nations this season. Hopefully, this is not the last of these that we do, because personally for me, I've been getting more and more into women's rugby space as it's grown. I'm kind of late to the party, but I'm enjoying talking about it. I'm enjoying being a Bristol Thunder fan. Not enjoying being a Wales fan, but I am one. And I think it was good to talk about it. So I hope everyone enjoyed listening. And if you would like to see more women's rugby content, definitely let us know. Anyway, thank you so much. And thank you to my wonderful guests, and speak later.
Yeah.
You have to press stop, Harley.